Please welcome to the stage the Brothers Karnstedt.
Hello.
There it is. Our poem is called Bald, Bespectacled Brothers.
Here we go. I once observed my young brother squint when reading on a box some fine print. Soon he had some stylish frames, and in baseball he improved his aim. But that luxurious hair would not remain, for ultimately he became my bald, bespectacled brother.
When Paul was just a lad of 19, upon his head a light did gleam. While others had heads full of hair, I saw that his scalp was starting to bare. Even though at the time his vision was fair, ultimately he became my bald, bespectacled brother.
The back of my hair was down past my neck, but I looked in the mirror and, what the heck? Sector 5 was getting thin. I mustered up the strength within to opt for an extremely tight trim. A baldness win, I'm becoming a bald, bespectacled brother.
I eventually started to get my brother's pate, and in accepting that, I was indeed quite late. When my hairline started to recede quite a bit, I had a horrible comb-over, but my glasses were fit. Because I had accepted at the time that I couldn't see anything, I just had really bad vision. I was on my way to becoming a bald, bespectacled brother.
Let me be a wise old sage and advise you all. You'll hit a certain age, you'll be driving, and you'll experience some worry because the signs and stoplights will be very blurry. I realized at age 30, I was in a hurry to complete my journey as a bald, bespectacled brother.
I saw a picture of my combed over strands, and I really felt that this could no longer stand. I saw that there was no hope in my hair that I could save, so I grabbed my razor and I gave it a shave. My specs and no hair look is now my fave. I have accepted myself as a bald, bespectacled brother.
So for those out there that are self-conscious of looks, feel free to take a page out of our books.
Accept who you are, your soul and your vibe. Eventually, you'll find your tribe.
Every day we feel more alive
Because we are bald, bespectacled brothers.
There you go, the bald, bespectacled brothers. Can we call you that from like now on if we see you in the hallway? Like, are one of you like bald and bespectacled number one, and the other one, can we just call you that? Or should we stick with like Karnstedt?
I mean, he was bald first, but I had glasses first, and then we merged eventually. We found each other.
All right, we'll just call you the music guy and the science guy. That'll work, okay. All right, so we're gonna keep the bespectacled thing going. We're going to drop the bald, sorry guys. And again, I said I would come back around to how that Google form last year really helped create this year's event. So when we asked you what type of writer would you like to see this year, the most common answer from students was a screenwriter. So that's what we've done. It took a while, we found one, and it was the perfect fit because he's actually adapted a few works that students in this building have read for their English class. So let me introduce him to you. He is the winner of the Drama and Latitude Screenwriting Award at the 2010 Austin Film Festival. Then he earned a prestigious Nickel Fellowship for Screenwriting from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. 16 years later, he now has 5 feature films to his name, including an adaptation of the memoir Just Mercy and a piece of the Marvel Universe, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. In that span of time, he's been nominated for a Hugo Award, a Bradbury Award, and an Image Award from the NAACP. Please welcome all the way from California, Andrew Lanham. Okay, Okay, so here's how we're going to do this. It's going to be kind of interview style, and I'm going to start with just a bunch of questions. If you were here in earlier periods, I'm going to try to get a few different questions in so you get a little bit different information as well. And then we will certainly have time to turn it over to you guys if you have questions for Andrew also, okay? Quickly, Andrew, could you just describe for anyone in the room who doesn't know what a screenwriter is, like what you do?
Yeah, hello, my name is Andrew. I'm a screenwriter. A screenwriter is the person who writes the script for the movie that you watch or the television show that you might be watching. And the script itself is, for a feature-length movie, is probably a 120-page document that is meant to be a blueprint for every other person working on the movie to be inspired by and hopefully take something different from it, but also something hopefully universally the same so everybody can be aligned in one vision. So I'm the person who writes that.
We do have one class here who I promised I would ask a question from, and I want to get to that right away. So they were wondering, because they've been doing some film analysis, some mise en scène, so to speak. They were wondering how much control you have of that sort of stuff in the script and how much is just director, cinematographer, etc.
I have literally no control whatsoever of anything that happens to the script once I have hit send. If I was a writer-director, so both of these movies I wrote with a friend, Destin Cretton, who then went on to direct them, the situation is completely different. So if you want total control and want to be, the person on set doing that, managing everyone, then you have a lot of control. And I think I'm perhaps lucky, or there's something slightly different in especially these two films, because I wrote them with the director, they match pretty closely to what we wrote originally. Like what I saw up on the screen was never a huge surprise at the end of the day. But I'm usually, if I'm writing something for myself, which would be called a spec script, like nobody's paying me to do it, I'm just generating it on my own and trying to sell it. If one of those were to get made, potentially I might have a little bit more control. I could potentially be a producer on it, stay on it through the process. But the majority of my work, I had to pitch against 3 or 4 other people to get hired for a job. I'm then paid whatever I'm paid in order to write the drafts of the script. And once I send that script in, and my drafts are done, and there's every chance that they just go hire another writer to keep writing that same script. It has to go through so many different steps before it actually becomes the movie that it's not always easy, but I have to work at the practice of just kind of letting go of it in my mind as soon as it gets sent out.
Something I just thought of when you were answering that question. So even for a screenwriter, face-to-face conversational speaking skills, important.
Yes, they're important. They're not the most important thing. If you can write a really great screenplay and continue to keep writing them, you can maybe overcome some of that other stuff, but you have to have a working career. I won this thing called the Nickel Fellowship, which is the screenwriting competition by the Oscars. And that's probably the easiest way for a screenwriter to really just get their foot into the industry. Any of these screenwriting competitions, I believe as soon as you turn 18, you can start applying to them. Young people certainly win them all the time. And if you win one of the big ones, agents are going to reach out to you directly. So once you have an agent, you can then start going up for work, but you still have to go up for that work. And less things are being made now than were being made before. So for feature screenplay work, you're probably pitching against 3 or 4 other people, and you have to turn your plan of what you're going to do into a 20-minute long talk. That being said, most people, the stories you hear about pitching are people spontaneously just pitching in the room, and some people are incredible at that. I write my pitches down and I'm looking people in the eyes, but I have a written document that I'm working off of when I pitch. So there's ways around it. If you work on a television show, you're going to be on a staff of 7 or 8 other writers, but that, I think, hopefully more becomes an environment like you're just like sitting around a table hanging out with your friends. It's just you happen to be talking about the plot of your television show for 10 hours at a time.
If we could somehow go back to 14-year-old, 18-year-old Andrew, and he could see your resume at this point, what does that kid say? How does he respond?
I would think that, you said 14?
Yeah, 14 at high school.
High school Andrew would probably be very impressed that I was able to realize the dream of doing something in movies, and that I was able to take my love of literature. I've always been like a voracious reader. I've always been a big movie kind of geek, watching everything. Even today I still do. So I think he would probably be very impressed. And I wish I could tell him to relax.
So you mentioned that you have Tourette's syndrome and that was a real struggle in high school. Can you talk about just kind of overcoming that, especially in terms of getting where you are today?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with pretty severe Tourette's in the 7th grade, I want to say. I never swore, which is called echolalia, and a very small percentage of people do that, but I did like everything else. I shook my head around. I would always tap people's shoulders and touch their cheeks and made all sorts of crazy noises. As a kid, I learned to, it was very challenging personally, but I also used humor a lot with it. So I was fortunate from other stories you kind of hear, where I had a lot of friends and I got along well with everybody, but I had to work hard at that. As I got older, most of the tics went away, but it usually comes along with OCD and ADHD, and I've got both of those pretty intensely. And I think that's more and more common. I have a 7-year-old, and it seems like every boy in his class is really struggling with ADHD type stuff. My script that won me the Nickel Fellowship was about a paramedic with Tourette's syndrome. So it wasn't specifically about me, but I definitely took my personal experience and transformed it into the most personal thing I possibly could I guess I was maybe 24, 25 when I wrote that. And it did very well for me. It got me my start in my career. And I think that just speaks to, with any creative field, when you're young, when you're in high school, it's try to create or try to write the thing that speaks to you the most, that only you could write, whatever that might be. Don't worry too much about the end result of where this thing might wind up someday or where you hope for it to wind up. With that script, I had just gotten into graduate school, and I thought, I need another script to show up to graduate school with. And so I just wrote the thing that I felt the most kind of in my gut. And it didn't end up becoming a movie, but it worked out very well for me. And I have to assume that in those competitions, or even if you're applying to a creative writing program, they're reading a stack of 100 scripts or 100 short stories or however many it may be. And I think when one comes along that you can tell was written with that personal connection, it maybe rises above a little bit more.
So looking at the list of movies you've been a part of since then, you've got the Shack adaptation, Glass Castle adaptation, Just Mercy adaptation, Shang-Chi obviously is something of an adaptation as well. And I know, even The Kid, right, has some sort of backing. Do you miss writing at all, that kind of fully original material?
I've just started writing more fully original material in the past few years, and I've definitely missed it. I was so fortunate to get my career started in Hollywood, and then I was so fortunate to have work. And I was also very fortunate that I was able to follow a lot of these projects from the beginning all the way until the end. Things like The Kid, Just Mercy and Glass Castle. I was on them the whole way through. In Hollywood, a lot in the entertainment industry with screenwriting, very often you pass in a script, people might like it, you revise it 2 or 3 times, and then they hire somebody else to revise it more times. And then when it goes into production, they hire another person who is the person who gets paid the most, and they never get their name on it, but they're doing revisions like on set as well. So every single question every single project sort of starts from a different place and has a completely different genesis, including like I'm working on a project right now with Andy Samberg and Radio Silence, the guys who made the last few Scream movies. And that was like an idea that Andy Samberg had, but it was literally like he'd always wanted to do something like Gremlins. And then I pitched him like an idea for a movie off of that. So as I've had success, there's been more opportunities for kind of original work that's still in the confines of getting paid for it. But yeah, I think that it's kind of, I've come full circle to a place where I'm now starting to write some things that are just solely arise kind of from myself. We'll say, looking back, I wish I could tell the 20-year-old me who was just starting writing that it's scary to think you might not make it. It's scary to think you might not be good. Like there's all these things that are terrifying, but there is such freedom in it not being a job yet. There is such freedom in being young and like just believing in everything, like thinking up an idea and getting excited by it and having goosebumps and not second guessing it with all of the things that age kind of adds on top of it. I think taking advantage of that and just starting writing, starting revising, and if you want to be in production, if you want to be a director, starting to do that now. There are more and more, there's like young people making short films, putting them on YouTube, and like there's this movie Obsession that I think just premiered at South by Southwest. I feel like that the kid's like 21, and so he's got a career because he just started doing it.
That's a great piece of advice. The experience that you were talking about with writers who they put in all this work, they're part of it, and then they never even get their name on it. Have you had that experience at all, or has that been, and if so, how have you dealt with that?
I've worked on some projects that my name is not on, but I would not say that I did so much work on those projects that I'm left feeling like my name should be on it. It's a complicated process where at the end of the day, any script that has multiple writers goes to the Writers Guild, and it goes through an arbitration where you have to prove that you have written more than 33% of the script in order to have your name on it. Every writer writes an argument, and then 3 independent other writers read all of the arguments and decide who has their name on it. I think only in the past few years they added like additional material by, which if you're like really looking into like the geeky side of credits, it's like you can see those now listed on IMDb. But I think it like all of that kind of just falls under the umbrella of things that are so far outside of my control or the writer's control that you can definitely get hung up on them. But from the beginning of writing through to now, the goal is always how can you shut all of that external stuff out of your mind to just tap into feeling like what you are producing is coming from a true creative place that isn't clouded by, doubt and all of the like just junk that's happening around you in the world.
One other non-visual question, and then we'll get into some of the visuals. This whole Andy Samberg Gremlins thing, like how does it go from this idea that is in his head to you being a part of it? Like,
the woman who runs Party Over Here, which is Lonely Island's production company. I worked with on a different project a few years ago. I had lunch with her. She said Andy has always wanted to do something like Gremlins. I then came up with an idea. I pitched it to Andy. We then pitched it to the directors. It was a very lucky situation where everyone was into what I was pitching. then we took that whole package out and we pitched it to all of the studios, and then Amazon bought that pitch, and at that point I'm getting paid to write. In the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, screenwriting was a big pitching industry. It's much less now. So that was a unique situation. A more common situation would be write it yourself, then try to get someone like Andy attached to that script, then take it out and try to sell the script. They're much more you're more likely to get traction these days with a script that's written versus a verbal pitch.
You mentioned you were, or always have been, a voracious reader. I wanted to show the students this because for Just Mercy, you sent us some pages of what, when you were reading the book, your annotations kind of looked like. Can you just kind of talk through what you're doing when you're reading a book like this with the purpose of adapting it? And I'm really curious about the facial expressions you wrote in the margins too.
Yeah, my notes are very highly non-scientific and kind of just the gut that I'm feeling as I read it. I've really enjoyed the process of adapting, and I've been really lucky where I've worked on, The Glass Castle, Just Mercy. We didn't end up selling it, but I worked very closely with Barbara Kingsolver on a limited adaptation of Demon Copperhead that won the Pulitzer 2 years ago that we would have written together. So I worked a lot with her over the course of a year on that. So the first time I just read the book and try to ask myself whether or not I think it's adaptable. And the yes would be that I can see what this 3-act Hollywood structure would be for the material, just like off the bat. And if we need to make changes, are those changes going to break what the original material is so intensely that readers of the book are saying, why did they do this? They never should have bothered, which happens quite frequently. If I've answered yes to that question, I'll read it again, and I will have a pen, and I'll start marking things on the side. The eyes just mean that I think something is particularly visual, and I kind of tend to think more emotionally than visually when I'm writing, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm not, I don't have a dream of also becoming a director. I really love the process of the writing itself, but I'm still trying to figure out, okay, this is what the guard looks like, this is what the vegetation room looks like, so I can start to kind of see where the scenes might be. When I read through the book the third time, I start making notes of where sequences or scenes are actually going to begin or end. So, short sequence, act 1, sequence start, act 3, and I will start highlighting dialogue that I think is important. The corresponding scene to this movie, or to the actual scene of this scene in the movie this is the beginning of the book, it's the beginning of the movie, and the dialogue in a lot of places is identical to what it is in the book, so I have a lot highlighted. And stars are, this is even more, this is even extra important. I have a producer, actually the producer of this movie, he reads the book with colored paper clips, and he's given me it before, handed it to me, here you go for help while you're writing, and the book just looks like this and has 1,000 colored paper clips, and I have no idea what they even, it's 15 different colors, and so I have no idea what they even mean. It's just this is what I think is important, and it's the entire book, but it speaks to that, you read it, 3, 4, 5 times, so that I was very proud. There would be times working with Barbara on Demon Copperhead where I'd be able to find something a little bit quicker than she could. Because she had read it, she had written it a few years ago, and I'd been obsessively reading it over and over. But still, I was like, oh, I've done a good job.
Yeah, oh, totally. Cody, if you want to get the Just Mercy clip queued up. So what we want to do, guys, is show you a scene from the movie Just Mercy early on, right before the title pops. And they're going to throw the actual pages that Andrew wrote for the script on the left so that you can see. And the heads up that I want to give you, having been through this once now, you're not going to see it exactly. There's going to be passages that are going to be like exact, and then it might skip a little bit. So your eye might have to kind of jump around the page a little bit. But yeah, Cody, when you're ready to go, you can hit it.
You got 1 hour.
Hi, Mr. Davis. I'm Brian.
Henry.
The Southern Prisoners Defense Committee, they sent me here to tell you that they don't have a lawyer for you yet, but they hope to soon.
You're not a lawyer?
No, I'm still in school. Just interning here for the summer.
So you can't tell me nothing about my case?
I was supposed to tell you that you're not at risk of execution anytime in the next year.
Can you say that again?
That you're not at risk of execution anytime within the next year?
It's the best news I've heard in a long time. I didn't want my wife or kids showing up by the execution date coming. Now they can come visit. Thank you. Serious. My mom made me join our church choir when I was like 4. I sang lead baritone all through high school.
I played piano in church growing up.
And me. God is good.
All the time.
All the time. A couple A&Me choir boys hanging on death row. My mama go trip.
Man, that's crazy.
What school you going to?
I'm at Harvard.
Seriously, you going to Harvard? That's white boy status, bro. What the hell you doing slumming it up in here for?
Yeah. I'm in law school because I just want to help people. Just haven't figured out the best way to do that yet. Honestly, this internship has been the best experience so far.
Working on death row's been your best experience. You need to get out more, bro.
It'd been done 2 hours ago.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
Supposed to watch the clock.
Whoa. Hey. Sir, calm down. You didn't do anything.
You need to shut your mouth.
It's okay, Brian. Don't worry about me. You just come back. I'm pressing on the upward way. New heights I'm gaining every day.
I mean, every single time I see that, I get chills. How does it feel to be the writer and watch it on the screen? Yeah, it's appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, that one in particular is pretty cool because it's like the scene itself is almost the same as it is in the book. I feel like it works really, really well in the book. You can see how well it translated to the page of the screenplay, and then it's always fun, especially in a scene that works, to see how it kind of comes to life. You could tell by the screenplay pages, like a screenplay page isn't going to give you context about anything that's happening off the page, it's not going to explain the interior life of the characters. You have to try to attempt to figure out a way to do that through what you're seeing in the scene and the dialogue. And I feel like this scene, like that scene achieves it pretty well.
I'm about 1 or 2 questions away from going to you guys, just so you know. When do you get to see the movie for the first time as the writer? Is it like the premiere or?
It depends on the project. With the movies with Destin, I get to see them quite early because he's a close friend. So I'm usually watching them when he has an assembled edit together and he's wanting people's feedback on them. With the Western I wrote, it was like a test screening, like very late in the process.
Just trying to get a picture of him. There he is.
Yes, that's Destin. We won the Nickel Fellowship the same year, and we're not writing partners, but I've jumped on, obviously, to a lot of jobs with him, which I think speaks to, in screenwriting is something that I do and is solitary that I'm doing on my own, but making a movie is a huge, giant collaborative process. So if you want to be a director, certainly you should be getting a bunch of friends together and starting to do it. But if you want to be a screenwriter and think you just really love writing and that might be the thing in and of itself, it's still going to be important to meet other people and to meet other creatives and to start collaborating with them and working with them. There's also, when I was in graduate school, it was funny because I was at a screenwriting program and there was also a production program, and the directors in the production program they just wanted to write their own things. And there's definitely some writer-directors who only do that and have enormous success at it. But you also have people like Destin who loves writing and is a writer and is also just a warm, gracious collaborator. And so, I mean, I only started working with him because he called me one day and said, "Have you read The Glass Castle?" And my now wife had it in her bookshelf. And I read it. And then I said, "Oh, we just started talking about it." And he's like, "Oh, well, I'll just tell the producer I want to do it with you." Once you have a little bit of success in Hollywood, Hollywood's definitely built with a lot of people who come in with extreme confidence and tell people what they are going to do, and it carries a lot of weight.
Okay, I want to turn it over to the audience for some questions. You're going to have to throw your hand up really high, otherwise I'm not going to be able to see you. But does anyone have a question for Andrew? Yes, over there.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say I don't really, there's not any one of them that I could say is my favorite. I would have to say that the process of screenwriting is so heavily a process of revising and doing drafts over and over and over again. So every project and every script that I've been on, within reason, at certain times has been the favorite thing I've ever worked on, and at certain times I've said, "This is impossible, I can't do it, this is the hardest thing I've ever written." Because you're trying to take your own inspiration and your own feelings and what you're trying to bring to it, but you also have to get it inside the confines of the classic structure, where pretty much every movie has a half an hour that sets everything up, and then the bulk of the movie is taking place across the hour in the middle. There's a low point 90 minutes in where somebody dies and all hope seems lost, and then a third act where everybody kind of bands together and comes up with a plan for how they're going to save the day. In different ways, the vast majority of movies that you see follow that, and it's really hard to figure out how to get it right and to kind of make something that satisfies so many different people. So I think the goal, and I think it's like the goal for me in my career now, but I also think it's the goal like when you're young and you're just starting, is just making sure you know why you're writing it for yourself, and that your first draft is just the opportunity to figure out what kind of questions you're trying to ask, and to sort of take the pressure off and allow each step of the process to somehow feel like this creative thing is your favorite. And protect what you're working on. I think feedback is incredible, and you need to start getting feedback if you're going to progress as a writer, but also protect what you're working on until you've been able to enjoy that piece of material as you create it. Because once you get notes on it, it's like a little bubble gets popped, and all of a sudden you realize it's not the work of genius that it felt like when you got the rush of goosebumps because of the inspiration that you had. And that inspirational feeling, I think, is why I do it. And yeah, don't get notes too early, but once it's time, get the notes and embrace them like enthusiastic. That wasn't really an answer to your question, I'm sorry.
Let's go over here in the middle.
Have you met Michael B. Jordan? And if so, is he as handsome in real life?
Michael B. Jordan, I have met a number of times. He probably could not pick me out of a lineup because it has been 7 or 8 years since Just Mercy came out. But when we were doing press for Just Mercy, he started calling me Andy. And no one has ever called me Andy in my entire life. And my mother, as a kid, would never let anyone call me Andy. But when he did it, I thought, oh, Michael B. Jordan calls me.
I'm not going to say no.
Yes, he's a very hard, I mean, he's like, Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx are just amazing movie stars, and they're so charismatic, and they're also incredibly hardworking, kind people. So being around them for the time I have been is very fun.
You didn't start calling him Mikey or anything?
I did not.
Yeah, on the right.
On average, a first draft of a script takes me somewhere between 2 to 3 months. A project takes years, and something like Just Mercy, for example, we probably wrote 7 or 8 full drafts of it. Brian Stevenson was also a producer on the movie, so it was a unique situation where we would write a draft and then we would get a couple of hours of notes from the actual person that we're writing about, where we're adapting his material. And so we worked very, very hard revising kind of with him more than we even might in another circumstance. It also depends on, there's more revision when I'm working with the director because I know he's gonna go off and make it. And if I'm just writing for a producer, I'm more likely to stick more forcefully to my guns in terms of what I'm contractually asked to do. But give or take a first draft around 3 months, around 4 when I was getting started, and a second draft might take me 2 months, and a third draft might take me a month.
I think gray sweatshirt or so, yeah.
Who was your favorite actor you worked with alongside?
So I don't work that closely with the actors at the end of the day. Like, the director is working with them. So I might develop with the actors. So like I have a project with Andy Samberg. I probably know him the most out of the actors I've worked with because he's been on the project from the beginning and it was like the seed of his idea, and he's a producer on it and he's involved in the entire process. Something like The Kid, I met Ethan Hawke like when I was on set, but Vincent D'Onofrio directed that. Well, I guess I scratch that. He's an actor, and I worked very closely with him because it was also his seed of an idea. So I guess I know him by far the best. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like a film set is kind of like summer camp, and there's most jobs in the industry are going from film set to film set to film set, and like summer camp, everyone becomes best friends. They experience a very intense collective thing together. At the end of it, they're gonna know each other forever, and then they all go home and move on to the next film set where it's an entirely new mix of people. And so the people in the industry who I'm the closest with are the people I've worked over and over again with. So someone like Destin, who's a friend, and I've kind of like experienced a lot of life alongside as well. I will say that Jamie Foxx was the most entertaining famous person I've ever been around. He could tell us, like he could captivate like 1,000 people telling a story. And I would have just sat there listening to him tell stories for hours.
I can imagine that, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, oh, sorry, up front, yep.
What guidelines does Hollywood give you to like write a script?
So there's, I think we touched on structure a little bit, that there's a 3-act structure for pretty much any Hollywood movie. The guidelines for any particular script are really just dependent on the project itself. So if you get hired for a Marvel movie, you're designing that movie within the confines of the Marvel space. If somebody asks me to pitch on Transformers 9, I'm gonna watch all 8 Transformers movies and try to come up with a story. Like, the material kind of dictates what the confines are. But then the Hollywood structure is kind of just a given. And if you're interested in screenwriting, teaching yourself that structure will give you a huge leg up. And there's, any of the just basic, there's a book called Story by McGee that teaches you just the basics, and that's great to read. There's also an amazing online lecture that's visual by Michael Arndt, who wrote Little Miss Sunshine, where he breaks down Hollywood structure using Star Wars. I watch it like once a year. That pretty much teaches you everything you need to know in order to start figuring out how to get the story that you're trying to tell into that structure. And even if you're making a short film, you still need a beginning and a middle and an end, with a middle that's probably twice as long as the beginning or the end. So teaching yourself those things, it doesn't have to be put into a 120-page screenplay right off the bat. You can put it into something smaller. But the best piece of advice I can give to any younger screenwriter is to just start writing.
Thank you guys, appreciate it, have a great weekend.